Good evening. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting for Thursday, March 20th, 2025 at 5:30. This is in the Emmett Shockley Administration Building. Mr. Kroll, can you call roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Cameron?
Present.
Mrs. Paez?
Present.
Mr. Orozco?
Present.
Mrs. Crumley?
Present.
Mr. Crow present.
Okay. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, this is a symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Any changes noted to the agenda
No,
for
sir.
approval? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I said I would move for.
Okay, second,
I'll second that.
Mr. Kroll.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Cameron?
Yes.
Mrs. Paez?
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. Crow, yes.
On to public comment. Any individual wishing to speak on the agenda item must sign up prior to the meeting. Once the meeting has started, requests for comments will be done at the discretion of the board. Individuals will be limited to 2 minutes unless a member of the board requests to extend the time for the individual addressing the board. We do have one person that signed up for public comment, Miss Viscata. Did I say that right? All right. You're welcome to sign up here if you want.
I'm not used to public speaking this. So my name is Cynthia Viscata. I have reviewed some of your policies and I believe you are in violation. Those specifically on B/0200 that states the power and responsibility, which includes the district policies approving the budget and employment of the superintendent. The main responsibilities, the approval and the employment of the superintendent. Another policy would be B/1050 states that the superintendent is the chief executive officer of the district. Policy B/350, states employees must follow chain of command for employment, school-related matter. The process starts, this process states from their immediate superior, which that would be either Mr. Parker or Ms. Chavez. Lastly, would be B0331 in evaluation of the board. Have these been done? If so, by people, like that way we can put input on what you guys are doing and who evaluates the board.
We're not going to comment on anything because it's not on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
We can hear you out. We'll take consideration, and if it needs to be revisited at a later time, we'll put it on the agenda and we'll revisit it.
Okay.
But-
Also, has Ms. Chavez at all been asked to come back to the board to her job?
Once again, we won't comment on that. We'll hear you out.
Okay, my problem is I know the outside operations. I know I got the IPRA report text messages regarding you and Bernie. I think you are in violation of this, and I think you would probably have to be removed from your position. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to be nice here, but I think we need to do this what's right and keep our superintendent because it's also creating a lot of stuff in our community.
2 minutes.
Okay,
Thank you. Have a good day. On to the next item on the agenda is reports. 25Deming?
I did receive a email from Ms. Berger. Due to spring break, they are not going to be represented today.
Okay. Next is a presentation by Jaramillo Accounting Group on the district's financial audit.
I know I talked to the auditors earlier. They were in Silver City and they were going to be coming down here. But I don't see that they've done it yet.
Okay, we can circle back around for that one. On to graduation requirements and early college high school. Mr. Simpson.
All right, school board, Mr. President, on behalf of early college, I wanted to present on the the adjustments to House Bill 171 for the graduation requirements for early college high school. And I think I have that document in front of you. Is that correct? You have our,
It's gonna be on the screen.
oh, it's gonna be on the screen. Okay, so. And as that comes up, I'll speak to it. The one kind of technical change would be to go back to the state requirement of 24 credits, whereas now we require 26 credits to graduate. And so we would align with the New Mexico PED requirement of 24 credits. And then and in each area, we make the adjustments as they made the adjustment requirements, so that in language arts, we have the 3 classes, language arts 1, language arts 2, and language arts 3 that are still required. But for our 4th language arts credit at early college, most often that is going to be composition. So it's college English 1120. It could also be LA4. We're still going to offer LA4 as a possibility for the 4th language arts requirement. But about 2/3 of our kids will do college English as the 4th language arts requirement. And then in the math requirement, that says that algebra 2 is no longer required. However, in our program, it's still going to be the normal pathway for all of our students to do algebra 2 because it's preparation for the PSAT and the SAT and preparation for college algebra. But we are going to change the language and the structure of our math courses to be called integrated 1 to algebra 2, integrated 1 to integrated 2. And what that simply says is that those classes will incorporate geometry and algebra, which is what House Bill 171 says that they want to include, is, that geometry and that math sequence. So that's what we're doing. A lot of times our 4th math class for early college is also a college math class. And so, we may do integrated 1, integrated 2, and then our students will move to college algebra and college statistics to complete the fourth math credit. We are making the change, and our changes are going to be very similar to Deming High School, but the U.S. history class will now incorporate New Mexico history. New Mexico history will no longer be taught at early college high school, although the content and the history of the state of New Mexico will be incorporated into the U.S. history class. And House Bill 171 says that we need a 2-unit elective pathway. And at early college, that 2-unit pathway is through the dual credit program. So our students will do 2 general education courses, or they'll do 2 elective courses that apply to a particular, major pathway, such as, pre-med or pre-engineering or pre-nursing. Or they may do 2 classes that apply to a welding program or electrical certification program. So all our 2-unit pathways will be college classes. And then at the end of that, it does say that the school board would approve the 2 units set by the school board. And we would request at early college high school that would be 2 dual credit classes that apply to an associate degree, or 2 units of AVID, which is a college career preparation class that all of our students are required to take. And so the board approved 2 units that early college would require would be 2 dual credit classes or the 2 college credit classes. And the reason for that is that while 99% of our students are going to take college courses and have those to meet the requirement, if we ever had a kid who struggled to get to college courses, we would still want them to be able to graduate by doing the high school or college prep classes. So it kind of covers the basis there for graduation. And in the packet that, you know, I also would like for you guys to have, I also have a list of the class substitutions that early college has. And so, you know, what the New Mexico PED allows is for high school students to substitute college classes for some of their core high school requirements. But you have to provide a crosswalk, which is documentation that you're covering the same content. And so I have a list of those for you guys to look at. And for example, you know, composition, the college composition class covers all of the things that you would get in LA3 or Language Arts 4. And so it's equivalent. So we use that to meet the high school requirement. Same thing for college algebra. You know, it can meet the requirement for algebra 2 or for a fourth math class for high school graduation. And, you know, there's a few other examples in there, but I have that list. And then the other two documents, I think if you go over to the next document, I have our 4-year plan, which shows the an example of what a student at early college would do over 4 years in terms of their core high school required classes. And then as you move into the yellow and the orange, those are college classes. And so it kind of shows that progression. In our program, we do the core classes the first 2 years, and then they begin transitioning into the college classes. So that really all their electives are college classes. And it's not accelerated in terms of time. You know, it's the same amount of classroom instruction in a core high school class. It's just that we do all of our core classes up front and put the electives on the back end of high school. So it's just a different ordering of the classes. It's the same instruction time. And this program, this 4-year plan here shows a cybersecurity program that we have set up through CNM in Albuquerque, which would allow a student to graduate from high school with a certificate in cybersecurity, which, you know, there's 3,000 job openings right now in the state of New Mexico in cybersecurity. And you can move with a 2-year certificate into a fairly high starting salary and then work towards your major while you're working. So cybersecurity is you know, a nice little program. The second and the last page is what a general associates through Western New Mexico University looks like in our school. And again, we have the aligned new graduation requirements. And then as they move into the orange and yellow, those are examples of how they would start taking the college classes. 10th grade, you take a few, 11th grade and 12th grade, you're taking almost all college classes. And I think that's everything on the high school graduation requirements for early college high school.
Question of the board?
Available. for any
Did you say that AVID is a college/career prep?
Yeah, it stands for Advancement Through Individual Determination. And it's a national program that is designed to help students who are underrepresented in post-secondary settings. And so it's targeted at you know, early college students who don't come from a college background. And 70% of our students are first generation. And so this program focuses on how to take notes, how to plan, how to do a calendar, how to organize and study, how to do a study group. It teaches the basics of how to be successful in college. It also spends a lot of time focusing on working from a sense of purpose, which means that we're helping them to do college research and career major research to help them kind of get a sense of what they want to do before they graduate. And so that's our college preparation class.
Did you say that that's a class that Early Learning College has already been providing?
Yes, well, for the last, I think we're in our 3rd year of this program.
Do you feel like it's been successful?
I do. I feel like it's been, it kind of gives us a structure to the, I mean, we would do this regardless, But, you know, this kind of helps us to hit all the bases because we kind of have, you know, some guidelines that we're supposed to hit in terms of how we're guiding our students. So I do feel like it's been successful, but we're still trying to perfect that. You know, we have almost 100% graduation rate, but what matters is how many of them are actually enrolling in college and doing that first year. That's what you want to see. That's when we know we're successful. And so, you know, we're still in the 60% tile and actually getting them into college after they graduate, I think. So.
Thank you.
Any questions by the board? Comments? Mr. Simpson, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. On to presentation on closing Members Valley High transition to a program within Deming High School.
Mr. President, members of the board, Mrs. Reinhardt, Mr. Lozano and his team will be doing the
It's a
presentation.
big team.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
President Orozco, members of the board, we come to you tonight to provide you an overview of the decision to transition Members Valley High School into a program, which we would like to title Members Valley Program within Deming High School. This change is going to be based on student well-being, operational efficiency, and alignment to the multi-layered systems of support framework. I am going to go through some different topics, but we will stop in between the topics to allow you time to ask questions or for the high school team to provide additional information. So the first key point that we want to present to you tonight for this transition, removing Members Valley High School into a program within the DHS, is for student well-being and inclusion. Members Valley High School students and families have expressed through interviews that concerns about being separated from DHS. They feel less than or stigmatized. Integrating Members Valley High School students into DHS will improve student morale and a sense of belonging. Students will also have a greater access to extracurricular activities, clubs, and athletics. So I will pause here for student well-being and inclusion. Do you have any questions or do you guys have any feedback?
Inclusion being, so this would move from where it's currently at into, or is it gonna be housed in the same location or?
Everything's gonna stay, we'll go through, yes, but that is a good question.
Okay.
It's gonna stay the same. That's what makes this really difficult for that inclusion piece. They're there, but yet they're not there. They're supposed to be separate. And I know that Mr. Lozano and his team did a lot of things. This feedback was given to them in the years prior. So that's why they brought them back into the building with the high school, but they're still, they combined lunches. They did some things to try to remove that feeling that parents and students were feeling, but they're still feeling the effect that they feel separate.
Okay.
Am I correct?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with just the stigma of being in a separate high school. And then simple things that are being brought up are like a different type of diploma, different colors of robe that have been there. Also, like she stated, we combined this year the lunch, so we were able to schedule it because they're on a block schedule. So they switch classes. We have to provide more credits per year to fast track them. That's the whole purpose of the program. So we were able to do that, bringing back into the main building. But those little inconveniences, I guess you would say, is kind of still lingering there.
So we're gonna go through operational efficiency. Currently, Members Valley High School and DHS share the same principle, leading to unnecessary administrative duplication. Consolidation will streamline responsibilities and allow better focus for the MLSS framework. And then resources can be allocated more effectively for direct student support. Anything to add there?
On the operational side, because we do share the same resources with like our counselors, our assistant principals with the school. There's instances where we have to change DACs to look up a student, counselors have to do the same thing. So on the logistical part, it's taking up so much more time when a counselor has the same student, for example, a senior, has to switch them when they go into the program, and it's a whole process. So it's a lot of loss of time where we could be utilizing those resources elsewhere.
So the impact on the school district, budget and operations, there will be no significant short-term or long-term financial support because everything's housed in the same building, the same resources, the same teachers. Staffing, facilities, transportation will remain unchanged. For curricular and instructional enhancements, students will gain access to a wider range of courses, including electives, AP classes, and career and technical education. So currently, right now, if they're in Members Valley High School, they're in Members Valley High School, and some of these programs are not offered through that. They're only offered through Deming High School. Teachers will benefit from increased collaboration with DHS staff. So currently, the Members Valley High School teachers collaborate with each other. In ELA, that's one person. And if we are able to combine them, it's more of collaboration for all the ELA teachers. That would be an example of a benefit. The MLSS framework will ensure students receive equitable academic and behavioral support. For the impact on the school district, looking at the cultural and linguistic responsiveness, transition aims to eliminate perceived barriers and ensure equitable access to DHS resources. So the kids would say, it's not just a high school resource, they're going to say it's all of our resource. All the kids will be together. And they'll have a greater inclusion for school-wide activities and multilingual support programs. And so now I come to you if there's any questions about the impact on the school district so far.
I think what's coming to my mind is just practically speaking, what will change? Like
Nothing.
Okay. That's what I thought. That's what I
Except-
thought I was hearing, but I wasn't sure
So we
if I
have to-
missed it.
Yes, we want to
Okay.
remove that school number
Okay.
and take it away and just have it, we have DHS.
Okay.
Nothing's changed.
Understood. Thank you.
I do, believe putting everyone together is better. I've heard, from students and from some parents, they feel divided, they feel like they're left out. That's just a feeling, right? Because they know this school's doing this school's doing that, and I think it's a wise, discussion for us to have and get our kids so that they're together. They don't have to worry about how I'm gonna get to sports or how I'm gonna, get to Spanish and then
Yes.
back over here to do my English class, et cetera, et cetera.
Does it have any effect on funding?
Nothing. Nothing. No effect on funding.
Okay.
And so this will come up as an action item on each action item. So we're going to ask that you would approve this resolution when you get to that.
Okay.
But we will still, if you think of questions, we'll stand again for questions if something comes up. And then now we want to present the detention center. So currently, Deming Public Schools has a school number for the detention center. We have not used that detention center. The Luna County Detention Center stopped housing minors after the 2019-2020 school year, leading to the closure of the educational program in 2021. Since no juvenile residents remained, the instructional program is no longer needed at the school. So we are asking that you would approve the resolution to formally close the school site as a procedural step. There's no impact on district operations, funding, facilities, staffing, or curriculum. We do remain committed to supporting those students. So just as a side note, we will be coming to you all next month to present an idea for a hybrid academy, which will help address some of those student needs. We want to offer flexible online and in-person learning to meet diverse student needs. It will enhance school choice, at-risk students, supporting the at-risk students, and providing structured learning for disciplinary cases and for students that are medically homebound. So we will be coming back to you to touch that, but you will see this action item under I if you would formally recommend to close that school site.
Questions, comments by the board?
Thank
I
you.
just think it's a great idea to put it together. I think right now, well, it's good intention on what we were doing, but it's separating so many, separating our students.
Yes.
And we want them to be inclusive and not exclusive.
So I understand that some of the students need some extra support. And so as long as that continues, where they continue getting the support they need, I've heard too from parents and from students that anytime you feel isolated or you feel different or separate, it's not really a good thing for kids. So I would definitely agree with that.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
And now we'll circle back to, did our auditors make it? Did you tell them that they have to buy dinner for the entire room since they were late?
Members of the board, Ottawa County Group is the ones that performed our financial audit for last fiscal year that ended June 30 of 2024. That has been released from the state auditor. So they're here to present that to you.
Did he let you in on the news? That you gotta buy dinner for everybody once we adjourn the meeting?
Got dinner. We're all here. It's a great turnout.
We're here for the audit though.
Yes, yes. They were here just for you guys. They were waiting.
Just for the audit.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, but yeah, so we are here to present the results of the June 30, 2024 audit. It's a pleasure to serve the district again. The audit process went very, very smooth. I'm Audrey Jaramillo, managing partner of JAG, and this is my partner Scott Eliason, who is the head of the audit partner on the engagement. Knows all of the details more than y'all probably even want to know. But I'll turn it over to him to go over the statements and the findings, and of course we'll stand for any questions that you have. Before I get started though, are there any comments or concerns before we jump into the details? Okay.
Let's see.
Over to Scott.
So as you can see up on the screen, the audit report was turned in, received on the 15th of November, which is the due date, and it was released by the state auditor's office after they do their desk review. And then a little bit of back and forth through the draft of the financial statements. They've released the financial statements back on March 5th. And so under the state audit rule, there's a requirement that we as the auditors present the results of the audit in a public meeting. Typically the first public meeting after the release of the audit. So I think everybody got a copy of the financial statements on the board. We delivered a week or so ago. And
can I jump in here and just say this financial statement is printed, but you can also pull it up on the state auditor's website for anyone who is that. They have a button up on their website in the auditor's office that says audit report search or something like that, and then you type in maybe just Deming so that you don't miss it in the search, and then you can find this. Just so you guys know.
116 pages, great reading.
We have bedtime reading.
So just to go over the results of the audit, as Audrey said, the audit went just fine. This audit also includes Cesar Chavez Charter School. So that charter school is administratively attached to the district, and the state auditor requires that we also audit that entity. We audit them separately. They have a separate set of financial statements, but their numbers are discreetly presented in a couple of the front statements. As part of that, any audit findings that they have, they're also included in your audit report. So there's a couple of findings that the district has, a couple of findings that the charter school has. Those are all in this report. I think the first place I would start out at in the report itself is towards the front. There's of course management's discussion and analysis. starting on, page 4, but really place to start, page 1. We always love to start at page 1. That's the independent auditor report. That report itself, a couple of takeaways. The first is we issued an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. Second point would be, that there's responsibilities to be taken here. So the district has responsibilities, and I think the most important one of the district on page. Right at the bottom of page number 1, responsibilities and management, for which is design an internal control structure, effective compliance structure, take responsibility for the financial statements themselves. And the auditors ultimately have a responsibility to, at the end of the day, issue an opinion on the financial statements and report to governance. Any issues noted during the course of the audit, and to issue their opinion. Again, it's an unmodified or clean opinion. I think the next place I would go is there are 2 statements up front, starting on page 10 and page 11, the balance sheet and income statement of the organization overall. I think a couple of takeaway points are, first of all, we can see Steve Chavez next to the benefits numbers. A couple of things to point out here. I think first of all, the organization is not a small organization. So you've got $207 million of capital assets, primarily buildings before depreciation. There's some pension liabilities that get pushed onto your financial statements. Those pension liabilities, the government accounting standard for independent wisdom decided that anytime an entity, which is cost your employer, if they participate in one of these pension plans or retiree healthcare plans, they have to pick up their prorated portion of the unfunded liability. They don't have to pay that, but that liability comes onto their, what we call the full accrual balance sheet. And just looking at it, $95 million pension liability and $12 million retiree healthcare liability, other big liabilities. But I think that just points out that the pension plans and retirement plans for the state are underfunded. The district picks up that underfunded portion in their financial statements. And then the page number 11 is your full accrual income statement. What I mean by full accrual is on the balance sheet, for example, we're picking up all the debt. We're picking up all the pension liabilities. We're picking up all the capital assets. Whereas the governmental funds, which are the funds that the district operates in on a daily basis, and there's a lot of funds in here. We here all night if we had to go through all the funds. There's probably, I don't know, 60, 70 funds in here that the accounting department has to spend lots of time reconciling every one of those funds. And spend a lot of time, posting, reconciling, making sure everything balances properly, making sure things are transferred between funds. But I would just point you to page 12, and that's page 12 is probably the most important fund. We call the general operating fund. That's what does most of the operational costs of the district flow through that. And then there's a whole bunch of other funds. And those, all those additional funds that you see in the financial statements are somewhat because of there's so many different funding sources. So the state sets up a new funding source every time there's a new federal fund or a new state fund. They get their own fund. It goes in the financial statements. There's capital projects funds. So the district, of course, always has some capital projects going on. So we'll have some of those funds. There's debt service funds. But I think the most important one is the general operating fund, and that's on page 12. And I just a takeaway, I think one takeaway just wanted to point out is we can see total assets in the general operating fund of about $31 million. And
That has actually gone up every year for the last 5 years. Just when Ben took a look back at 5 years ago, those total assets were 8.8 million. Next year, they went to 12.3, and they went to 18.8 and 21.4 into 30, almost 31. So the district has been good stewards of the funds that come in, and over time has built up the general fund. I think if we go back 5 years, that number was probably a little too low. I think where it's at now is pretty darn good. So I would say kudos to the district for being responsible in, you know, the funds that flow in, for which the general fund is where the primary operating revenue comes in, which is the SEG money from the state. That flows into this fund. And all these other funds, they have other funding sources. So this is the most important fund, I think, in the financial statements. And then after the statements, there's some other larger statements in the front and some smaller statements in the back. But in the interest of time, I would just point you to page 40. And this page 40 is where we have all the long-term debt. So the district pretty much every year issues another general obligation bond, and that funding is used for capital projects, paid back by property taxes. And you can see that in this fiscal year, the principal and interest payment is about 3.5 million, and that looks to be pretty consistent over the next 4 or 5 years, that 3.5 million. As it stands for the year ended 6/30/2024. So, you know, every time you have a new bond issue, other bond issues get paid off, and that's just something to be aware of. And I know that you work with the bond attorney on ensuring that you have proper debt capacity for new items. And then starting on 65, I'm not going to go over this. This just starts to all the minor funds, for which there are a lot of minor funds. I think the next place I would take you is page 103, the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So the district, it's a fair amount of federal dollars. And as such, there's a separate schedule on here that shows that the districts had about $23 million of federal awards. And because the district gets federal money, they get a second audit. That second audit is the audit of the federal awards. And the district actually has 3 audits going on at the same time. You have the financial statement audit, you have the federal funds audit, and then the state auditor says there's a whole bunch of compliance requirements that we want the auditor to look at. And those compliance requirements include things like testing mileage and per diem, testing procurement, testing the School Personnel Act, testing to ensure that the district is properly assessing and collecting the ERB, the retirement payments and retiree healthcare payments. So there's not only the employer's portion, but there's the employee's portion. Those get collected up and submitted in every month. So we do test some of those submissions. So there's probably a dozen different tests that we do under that third piece of the audit.
It's not just to add another point here. You guys can see that is the flow through money. These are all federal awards, and so we can see it's about 17.4 million or so
Just for the department
that comes through the Department of Education.
Just go a little bit further.
You know, as we see, you know, at the federal level, as they're making changes, these grants could possibly not flow through the Department of Education, but flow through another federal agency. It doesn't mean that the district would not receive the funds. It means that it would not be coming directly through, possibly through the Department of Ed. But you can see there's a lot of other federal agencies where the federal, like Department of Agriculture, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Interior, like many other federal entities flow through these grants that the district receives. So just wanted to point out that that could be changing.
Then, the next place I would take you to is page 105. In page 105, that's the, generally accepted government auditing standards. So the audit is conducted under government auditing standards. And it's a two-part report. First part is on internal control, and then on page 106, it talks about compliance and other matters. So this is where we summarize in just a finding number, if there are any findings. And there was a couple of findings on the district and a couple of findings on the charter school. And I'll talk about those findings here in just a bit, because that's one of the things the auditor wants us to talk about. And then the last report is the report of the federal awards audit, and we had no findings there. And then page 110, that is the summary schedule of the prior audit findings. And we didn't have any findings in the prior year for the district and the component unit. The charter school had no findings. And then on page 111, you can schedule findings and question costs. This is the one-page document that we would go to if we only had 30 seconds to talk about the audit. We come here and just say, you know, what kind of report did we issue? The highest level of quality at the unmodified or clean opinion. We did identify one weakness, material weakness, so one material non-compliance. We'll go over that. And then there were no other comments. We did look at one area this last year as it relates to the federal awards. We tested the child nutrition cluster. And then the audit findings themselves start on page 112. And I'll just summarize that. We call this finding the accounting for bond proceeds. And so some accounting was missed as it relates to the accounting for bond proceeds. There was the newest bond that was issued. It was issued through a different process. And because of this different process, management did not pick up on that. And we noted that during our testing. So no cash was missing. It just simply hadn't been reported. It was added as an adjustment into the financial statements. The amount was large enough to be called material. So I think this was more of an oversight than anything. And I really honestly have full confidence in Joe and his group. So I'm not concerned per se. It's just something that we had to report. Then we have two other comments. One related to the School Personnel Act. So I did talk earlier about that there were a number of sort of special tests that we had to do under the state audit rule. And this was one of them, School Personnel Act. It has about a dozen different areas. In this one area that we noted that there was some required training of employees that had not been done. And management did acknowledge that that did not happen, and the corrective action plan that they put a better system in place of those record keeping areas. The third comment related to budgetary compliance, and that's on 114. Those numbers are actually pretty small, over budget by a few $100s. The state audit rule requires that we report all those. And then the next couple of audit findings relate to the charter school. So I'm not really going to go over that other than saying we did have a School Personnel Act. Again, some required training didn't happen, some budgetary compliance on 116, and some purchasing situations where a purchase order was created after the invoice was created. So of course, the purchase order should come first, and then the invoice should come second when the vendor submits that for the goods and services. So I think overall good, just sort of one little area that we had a bit of a deficiency in, but otherwise I think the audit process was good. You know, it's already, I know it's budget season, and then it becomes audit season again. So
Never ends.
Never
Budget, audit.
But this is a lot of detail. I know that the board probably hasn't had much of a chance. I know that they probably got these a week or so ago. Or
We got them
days ago.
today.
You know?
Yeah, we got it today.
Oh, today. Okay.
Yes.
It came in last week, but, so I would say, you know, go through this. And if you have any really great detailed questions, Joe can certainly answer any questions as it relates to the numbers in here, because we get the information from the district and audit it and compile it and put together these financial statements. Any questions of the board?
Questions, comments by the board?
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's
You
good
guys
reading
coming
at
down.
night.
Put you to sleep, huh?
Members of the board, I have just a couple of comments I'd like to make on it. Yeah, we did have those findings. As Scott said, the major one was for that bond that was issued through MFA. We took it as if MFA still had those funds, that they weren't part of ours. We were recording it whenever we would receive the money from them, like we do other funds. It was a misunderstanding. It wasn't, you know, we still provided it to them. We gave them all the information. You guys have all the information. It was just miscommunication the way that it was presented. As soon as we found out about it, we did fix it. It's been updated. It's in our financials now. You see that in everything that you do. The State School Personnel Act, they had, HR had that one already solved whenever it was determined as an issue. They'd already put in place, actions to fix that. And then the small budget overages, that is relates to our money that we get from the county for the, property taxes. If we don't allocate enough to that, we end up with that small amount. And as you saw, we got a little bit more money in, which ended up causing a little bit more expense because the county gets 1% for administering those county taxes. So that was just, again, at the end of the year, we got more money than what we anticipated, so ended up getting a little bit more on expense. As you can see, I think the total amount was what, $200 in total. So.
Thank you.
I
Thank
think
you.
it's a very good presentation and all that. I think even of some of the years just, you know, before us, every time we have one of these audits, we all learn from it. So thank you, Jeff, for all your work.
Questions or comments? Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's what you turned out for the audit.
On to consent agenda. Changes to that.
Mr. President, members of the board, there are no changes to the consent agenda. Just business as usual.
I'll have a approval of the consent agenda.
Second,
I'll second.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
All right, on to action items and consideration of out-of-state travel for students from RMMS and DHS archery team to travel to national competition to Sandy, Utah, April 24th through the 26th, 2025. My understanding, three-time state champions.
Sure. Mr. President, members of the board, we have Coach Hernandez. I believe Ms. Spark is here as well to present.
Mr. Ariano.
And Mr. Ariano. And then, of course, we have all of our archers in the building that came to talk about their trip and to hear about this amazing audit.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. So both teams from Deming High School and Red Mountain Middle School are here to request permission to travel to Sandy, Utah for a national competition. Both teams have placed first place in 2 state competitions, which has qualified us to attend national. All of the archers that are here, I believe this is the 3rd time that they have qualified. They are 6-time national champions as of this month.
Wow.
Yeah, so this would be our third trip up to Utah. And, every year we learn something new. Our first year we went up there, we placed 12th overall. Last year we placed 11th overall. So this year we're shooting for top 10. Right now, the middle school is ranked we dropped to number 8 in the nation for 3D. And bullseye with our score, we're ranked number 16 in the nation. So we're, both teams, the high school is doing great too. And we really like to be able to take our kids up there to, continue that goal that we have to place top 3 at nationals one of these years. And maybe this year could be it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool.
Mr. President, is it appropriate for to move?
Yeah, I was gonna let the kids talk just a little bit and see what they had to say and what they if they want to go to Utah or not.
Yeah. Number 1 ranked in the nation.
Yeah.
Well, tied up there.
There you go.
I've been to nationals twice, and both times I've learned substantial amounts of things that I can use later in life. I've learned leadership qualities, just talking to the kids there, like everything about it. I think it's just an amazing experience. It's completely worthwhile. And both of the times I've been with my team, so they've always been there to support you, whether you're shooting or whether you're behind the line and you're just watching. It's always an amazing experience to be able to go to a national tournament to even qualify for it. And all the times we've been to state, it's been like the same thing. So I think nationals is just an amazing extension of the program, and it just enables kids to be able to go out and shoot and talk and achieve things that you might not even be able to do in other sports programs as an individual, which makes it like really, really amazing.
Thank you. Anybody else want to talk? How many students are you guys taking?
The high school will be taking, I believe, 17.
And Red Mountain will be taking 15 this year, which are the all-staters, the kids that place.
Awesome.
State.
Oh, that's awesome. That was awesome. I've seen the program kind of develop over the last couple of years, and it's really been neat to see how it's expanded, the time and effort that you guys have put in, both at school and out of school. And it's neat to see that, the students, the energy and just a different type of after school activity that, has attracted some of these kids and how it's helped them to kind of either come out of a shell or be more talkative, or even advocate for themselves on things. So it's really neat to see the work that you guys have done, and it speaks a lot. 3 times in 3 years, that speaks a lot, speaks volumes that you guys are returning. So congratulations on that. Anything else? Did you want to say something, Mrs. Cameron?
I'm moved. Is it appropriate now?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Before they get up to national, out into the world. I move that out-of-state travel for students, Red Mountain Middle School and Deming High School archery teams to travel for a national competition to Sandy, Utah, April the 24th through the 26th, 2025.
I'll second that.
Mr. Kroll?
Sir. Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco.
Yes.
Mr. Crow, yes. Congratulations.
You're going to
I hope you guys
Utah.
do good.
Thank you, guys. On to item B, consideration of out-of-state travel for 5th grade students from Ruben S. Torres Elementary to visit the Tucson Biosphere in Tucson, Arizona, April 16th, 2025. Mrs. Mag,
Hi.
how are you, ma'am?
No, thank you.
Good, good, thank you.
Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Turner. So our 5th graders have been very heavy in PBL this year. And so they are wanting your approval to go to the Arizona Biosphere. It builds on a unit that they previously completed on, why to advocate for the sustainability of agriculture in our community. And so it'll deepen, they'll have that background knowledge to deepen their understanding of biomes, the water cycle. It will also support the current unit that they're working on, which takes it down to all of the Earth systems, including space, all the way down, how they integrate together and support each other. And so they have offered a lot of hands-on activities, and this biosphere will also allow them to connect it to the unit that they just finished on cooking. And so seeing how all of those things come together. So our teachers are super excited to ask you to approve their trip.
How many students would be going?
65, I believe. It's all of fifth grade.
Great place.
I have never been there. I'm hoping they invite me.
Any other questions, comments by the board? If none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve out-of-state travel for fifth grade students from Ruben S. Torres Elementary to visit the Tucson Biosphere in Tucson, Arizona on April 16, 2025.
One second.
Mr. Kroll.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Cameron.
Yes.
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley.
Yes.
Mr. Orozco.
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
All right, you're going to
Thank you.
Tucson. Thank you. On to action item C, consideration of acceptance of the audit conducted by the Jaramillo Accounting Group. Is there anything further on that? Any other questions by the board?
I'll move to accept the audit conducted by Jaramillo Accounting Group.
Okay,
I'll second that.
Mr. Kroll.
Third. Mrs. Cameron.
Yes.
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley.
Yes.
Mr. Orozco.
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Okay. On to action item D, consideration of budget adjustment requests.
President, members of the board, excuse my voice, all this dust around has got everything all carried up,
Yeah.
messed up. We do have three bars going in before you today. The first one is a transfer bar, where we're moving funds to cover some additional PD that was happening at Ruben S. Torres over the spring break. The second bar, number 6, is an initial budget request. We got some money to put in school camera into one of the buses that we're going to be getting here shortly. So that's money from the state. Number 7, that is another initial budget, and that is some money that we're going to use to help with digital equality plan that we have. That one is for $6,500.
I have a question. You probably said it, but I was looking at something else. I mean, just on it, but tell me again about the family income index.
So what happened was we had some, there was some professional development that was happening over spring break. And so this was just to move some money to have those employees to be able to come in while they're on contract.
Thank you.
Any questions by the board? None, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the budget adjustment requests number 5, 6, and 7.
I'll second.
Mr. Kroll.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Crumley.
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley.
Yes.
Mrs. Cameron.
Yes.
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mr. Orozco.
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Adcock.
I'm sorry. I didn't say.
All right, on to item E, consideration of resolution to allow part-time employees to opt in for benefits offered by NMPSIA.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is an annual resolution that we bring before you. All it does is it allows us to notify NMPSIA that we're allowing our part-time employees to opt into any benefits that are offered by the district. Ms. Nips is here if you have questions specifically to it, but it is something that I bring to you guys annually. So I stand for any questions.
What are the number of, that participate in this from our district?
There's Ms.
I'm not
Nips.
sure, but I can get you the answer.
It's usually small,
It's
yeah.
very small.
That's okay, you don't have, I just wondered.
Any other questions, comments? None, entertain a motion.
I make a motion for the resolution to allow the part-time employees to opt in for benefits offered by NMPSIA.
I'll second.
Mr. Kroll.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Consideration on to item F, consideration of approval to allow amendment to board policy in a single meeting as permitted by policy B-2600 BGB.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, we will need an action for item G, so this will dictate what happens next. But normally when we bring board policy amendments to you, we require a first read and then the next, so it takes about 2 months to change policy. With the cell phone, the electronic communication during instructional day policy, we had struck all of the exceptions, lunch, health, 504s, IEPs. So with that, we feel that we need to go ahead and amend that policy as quickly as possible. So I'm asking for you all to go ahead and do what's allowed by policy, and approve an amendment to be changed or accepted in one action. So I stand for any questions.
Questions by the board? Any comments?
I'll move to approve to allow an amendment to a board policy in a single meeting as permitted by existing policy B-2600 BGB.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Kroll.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
All right.
Okay, Mr. President, members of the board, on item G, I am asking for the amendments to the policy that I just referenced, the electronic communication during instructional day. This is adding back, the exception for extracurricular activities, trips. The only thing that was not put back into the policy that was introduced last month is the passing periods and lunch periods.
Any discussion by the board for that?
No, I will move for amendments to electronic communication during instructional school day policy.
I'll second.
Okay, motion in a second, Mr. Kroll.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
On to item H. Consideration of resolution authorizing the closure of Members Valley High School to allow for the program to transfer into Deming High School as a program within the school.
Mr. President, members of the board, Ms. Reinhardt will make her way to the podium if you have questions for H or I. And so she stands for questions or may have a comment.
No.
No, okay, she stands for questions.
Any questions or comments by the board? If none, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion for the resolution authorizing the closure of Members Valley High School to allow for the program to transfer to Deming High School as a program within a school.
I'll second.
Mr. Kroll.
So, Mrs. Crowe, Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You'll have another one.
Don't think us yet. We got one more. And then on to item I, consideration of resolution authorizing the closure of the school formerly held at Looney County Detention Center.
Mr. President, members of the board, again, Mrs. Reinhardt is standing for questions.
Still has no comment?
And still
I
have-
still have no comment.
Okay.
I'll comment. PED has asked for this one to be
Yes.
closed.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It's just because they see a school number and it's very confusing, so they wanna see the data, they wanna see the attendance rate.
And there's
It's
nothing
Very
there.
confusing.
So PED has requested this closure.
Any comments by the board? If none, I'll entertain a motion.
I will move to approve the resolution authorizing the closure of the school formerly held at the Luna County Detention Center.
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe?
Sir, Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mrs. Conley.
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to item J, consideration of the CDW-G quote number PHVW 597 for student devices, specifically incoming freshmen, for $227,780.63, but up to $250,558.70.
Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Glick, I've asked Mr. Glickler to do a quick presentation on J through Q, since that is all his department. He'll explain the different actions and what they would do. But I do want to say that I want the record to reflect whoever makes the motion and seconds it will go ahead and be reflected on J through Q. With that, I will hand it over to Mr. Glickler.
President Orozco, members of the board, and that would be, I believe, J through P. Q is audit results,
Yes.
so we'll do them both separately.
Okay.
I have a number of items for your consideration regarding both purchases of computers for the district, out of district funds, and acceptance of some E-rate projects that we're pursuing over the course of the next several months. The first one is a quote for computers for incoming ninth grade students. This is a range which is a little bit irregular. Normally we have a specific total for you. However, we received a quote for a number of computers. We then had to reduce that number of computers because our Title I allocation has declined. Secondly, we received a quote for a number of computers based on the declined quantity that we were able to get. And we had to get a second quote because Trump tariffs went into effect and the vendor was not able to give us a confirmed number. We have since gotten a second quote on top of that from the vendor after the second round of tariffs happened. So what we're requesting is within that range, we'd like to get those computers. Currently it's sitting at $233,000. We anticipate that the number that we are presenting to you for your approval would cover under 400 computers this year, but we do have a smaller ninth grade class, but it would cover the computers we believe we need. Any questions on item J, please?
You're saying it would be between 227 and 250.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So do you foresee any other changes to?
I'm not sure I can foresee anything at this point. And that's what they're really struggling with, is they're doing their due diligence and their best to give us valid quotes, but they can't have any predictability. So they're doing their very best. And they're also doing their best to keep us as a partner and try not to pass on the entirety of the tariffs, but there's only so much they can do. They've done some good numbers for us so far. And I think currently we're fairly under that 20% boost, but we're worried about what might happen next if we don't get them. The short answer though is yes. Any other questions on item J?
No.
Item K is the consideration of a Lumen quote for our internet connections. These are our internal connections. You've already improved our internet for the district. You also improved an internal connection to Columbus. This is an E-rate application that we're pursuing for internal connections for this building here, as well as 3 of the schools where we don't own the fiber to the buildings, but we lease it from Lumen. Those schools are RST, Bell, and Chaparral. We're looking for a larger number this year than we have historically because those schools need more bandwidth. They so far have 200 megs of bandwidth per school. And that's not a lot. The minimum recommended is 2 megs per student. You can do some math, I think, and realize it's not enough. In the last year, we boosted Chaparral to 500, and that did absorb a good chunk of the difficulty that they were having, but not all of it. With this, we're looking to move all the schools to a gig, and also this building as well, possibly. And the number that we have presented here of $397,000 would do that. Of that, however, this is an E-rate application, and we'll be getting back up to about 90% of that number from the federal government. Any questions on item K? And that is a 36-month number as well, so the next 3 years. Item L is also E-rate. This is a network refresh for Columbus Elementary. This one is approximately $120,000 of network electronics. This would replace the network inside the building that is about 11 years old right now and is reaching end of life. So there's a recommendation that we replace it. And we have an opportunity to do so right now. Because at the end of our 5-year cycle of E-rate funding for electronics, after this 5 years, we'll get those fundings refreshed. So we're trying to use the last bits of it while we have a chance. That's $120,000. Of that, we're gonna approximately get about 80-ish% of that reimbursed, maybe 85%. I can be less specific on that one because we have to calculate the number of pre-K students that are at these sites and cost allocate that out. You can get reimbursed for that. Any questions on that item? Item M is the same, but it's $92,000. Any questions on item M?
Give us a minute, we could think of something that you could do.
I have absolute confidence. Item N is a consideration of an AT&T quote. There's something new that E-rate is offering this year, and that is letting us put Wi-Fi on buses. It's interesting, we're not sure how long that program will endure. Programs that provide internet access tied to the school beyond the walls of the building are in a little bit of jeopardy currently, but this one here is not currently in jeopardy immediately, so we'd like to apply for it and see what it's like. We've got a quote from AT&T that we can get up to 10 buses covered. We put a little bit of wiggle room into that as well. It's actually under this $19,000 that we're putting here, but we don't know what the fees are yet because there are still taxes and fees that are associated with it. We just know they're not this much. So we're requesting this, and of this, we're also going to get about 90% reimbursed through E-rate. Any questions on item N?
What would that allow us to do with having the Wi-Fi in the buses?
Whatever we like to do, sir.
So if we have any other issues, basically the bus can become the school or whatever, like during COVID and stuff like that, basically.
Correct, sir. And what you're referencing is during COVID, we had 3 buses that we put hotspots on, and we made them into mobile internet centers that we could park in places where we knew there were deficiencies and provide connectivity. What we'll be hoping to do with these is provide internet connectivity, especially on activities routes, so that the students are able to do homework during that route, or have internet connectivity during that route for communication, whatever it is they may need. Because these are district owned, we do want to make sure that the communication is still filtered. So we would limit it to the contact from their student computer as best as possible. And those computers are filtered even if they're at home. So that should cover that just fine as well. But we could certainly also use it because this is a robust device that we're putting into the bus, not merely a small hotspot. We could use it very much for the purpose you're describing, sir. And that is a 1-year quote. We also have item O. This is our firewall renewal. We have a firewall for the district. It's one of the things that protects our internal connections. It's not the filter. The filter is what blocks you when you go to sites you shouldn't be going to. The firewall prevents people from getting into our district network from the outside, and we don't want them. This is a renewal for 3 years. We actually have a redundant firewall, I should say resilient firewall. We have a backup for it in case the first one fails. We're renewing both licenses. And this is a 3-year quote. This one is under
$17,000 based on the rest of them. Wow.
Yes, ma'am. $17,000 for 3 years. I will say that this was a competitive quote. For most of these, we just have one bidder. This one here is under $20,000, and we shouldn't normally have to go to the board for it, but it was a competitive quote. We had multiple vendors apply for this one. We judged this was the most cost-effective option that we had, and so this is the one that we're putting for your proposal for your consideration.
Thank you.
Any other questions on item O? We have item P, which is another license renewal, but it does a little bit more than that. Item P is our Wi-Fi license renewal. So the access points that we have in the district is one over there above the exit sign. We pay a license on those. It is a 3-year license that enables us to remotely manage them via a single console, makes it really easy to take care of these throughout the district. That license we have to renew every 3 years, and the cost to renew those works out to about $88,000, $90,000 every 3 years. That's just the license. Of that, E-rate again is going to cover up to about 90% of that. You can see here that this proposal here is for $531,000, which is a lot more than the number I just quoted. But that is because one of the requests we had on this bid this year was not only to take the licenses and refresh them, but also to identify any access points we have around the district that are older or obsolete or becoming obsolete and give us an option to upgrade them. This does that as well. What the upgrade makes possible is that there are computers increasingly that can take advantage of a faster form of Wi-Fi. From our point of view, most of us aren't going to notice the difference, but as newer devices come into the district, they would have faster download speeds to the device themselves based on that Wi-Fi, and these access points give us that option. They also give us some pretty sneaky options in terms of how we can manage our network, in terms of bringing people into our guest network, making sure that they're on the correct staff, student, or guest lane they're supposed to be in, but most of that again wouldn't be noticed by individuals. It's something that we like though. Any questions on P? With that, those are all of my proposals. Then for any questions on the total?
I do have a question. All of this money will be coming out of our budget or from other?
That is a very good question. So the very first one that I mentioned, which is the computer refresh, that one is not an E-rate program. Historically, that has come from Title I funding. A great chunk of it does. We also warranty those devices against damage, any kind of damage, because students might just drop them. That comes from operational, that does come from our budget. The rest of these items are E-rate items. And so that funding comes from the sources that we can identify. Typically that is operational, but in some cases it is SB9, but it is our budget. However, we are only billed a portion of the costs that you're seeing here. Rather than play the game of we pay and then we get reimbursed, what I like to do is work with vendors that just give us a discounted price up front. So we're gonna see our portion is out of our budget will be, like I said, about 10–15% of the numbers that we're seeing.
Okay.
But yes, our budget.
Feel better.
We all, yeah. We all feel better about that. Very good question though.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Yeah, once again, Mr. Clickler, I mean, you're able to bring us this stuff, but you're also able to find solutions on the back end that lessens the blow for the cost. So thank you for that.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
I'll move to approve all of the quotes and awards as presented by Mr. Glickler as to J through P.
I'll second that.
Mr. Kroll.
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll, yes.
Okay, with that, on to consideration of acceptance of technology audit results for SY 24-25. That is number Q, or letter Q.
President Orozco, members of the board, that is also mine. We have completed the technology audit. And it started in late November, early December, and it carried through the very early part of this year. We did have a few disruptions because of weather, but we kept on doing it. And we just closed the last site about a week and a half ago, and now we're presenting it to you for your consideration. What the technology audit entails is we, the technology team, on behalf of the principals, so they don't have to do it, go around the entire district and scan every technology item we can find. The goal is to find everything. Realistically, we're going to find about 98% of our things if we're doing our due diligence. But the goal is to find everything. Once that is complete, anything that we were unable to locate, we have to make a judgment call. Do we believe it exists and we want to go hunt it down a little bit longer, or do we need to remove this from inventory because we did our due diligence and we couldn't find it? And that is the report that you're being shown right now. I have a very slightly different copy from the one that you're seeing on the screen here. And the reason for that is, since this was sent to you, we found some of these things. So I'll explain to you what that means when we get to it. This spreadsheet has multiple tabs. The one that Mr. Charles has on the screen right now shows the total number of missing items that we had. Out of our 18,000 technology items, there were 450 that in this version of the report, we were unable to locate by the time we delivered this to you. The number has since dropped to 418 in the last week as we have located many of these items. We have the total dollar value of what the purchase price is. I also include the depreciated value of the items because many of these items that we couldn't find are old. And by old, I mean 10, 15, 20 years in many cases. And so I have that column for your consideration as well. The number that we see up there for that depreciated value is $62,000, excuse me. That's currently sitting at $51,000 as we found many of the items on this list. We've also split this up by school site. And this will reveal one of the challenges we have in the district. If you'll please scroll back up to the first one. So you can see that the numbers per site are varying depending, in many cases, the size of the site. Bigger sites, more inventory. But we also have the high school number, which is perhaps a standout number, and the district offices number, which is also a standout number. And those two I'd like to explain in a little more detail. The high school is currently the only site that still, rightly I think, sends computers home with their students. Deming High School that sends their computers home with students, other than early college high school. And you can see that they have 230 items that we've been unable to locate. Of those, approximately half of them are student computers. And it's not because people are taking their computers and running off and selling them. These are students who have disenrolled, didn't come back. So this is very similar to the experience that I'm sure many of us have had over the years of a textbook vanishing with a student that just never comes back. These numbers are pretty similar to the numbers you see for textbooks over the years. But that's why that number is large. And so some of the things that you're working on is we recognize that this is a large number.
Bless you.
We're trying to find additional ways to track those computers, to manage those computers when we don't have our hands on them, to break them when we no longer have them anymore, so that we can mitigate against this a little bit. The other things that make those numbers large is between especially high school and district offices, is a lot of those are technology items, so that's on us. And what that means is that we do a lot of transfers from our building to sites, from sites, lots of transfers. And we did more this year than usual for lots of reasons. We did a lot of transfers. Things got lost in that process. So we've recognized that we have an imperfect transfer process within the technology department that has caused some of these numbers, and we're reviewing that as well, trying to find these things a little bit better than we have. I would also point out that I know if she's watching right now, the LST at Bell Elementary will be very upset that number 1 is there. That number actually should be 0. There are no missing items at Bell Elementary. That is actually in my little school iPad that is fairly old. You can see it's 4 years old based on its depreciated value. It's out there somewhere. It's in a closet, probably just locked up. So I apologize, Marisol, if you're listening. Next slide, please. So the first spreadsheet you saw was everything. The items that we are required to report to the board are those over $1,000. And this spreadsheet captures that. And you can see that we have 23 items total that have a dollar value of 1,000 or more that we were unable to locate according to this document here. Again, I have their sum of their purchase price. You can get a sense of the age of some of these items based on their depreciated value in that last column. And once again, since we have sent this to you, we have located 12 of these items. So those numbers now would be our purchase price items of the items that are missing is down to 17,000, and our depreciated value is under, it's $1,225. So about $6,500 off the depreciated value. We have one computer of cost that we can't find of everything in the district over 1,000. That is important. I've also included in the spreadsheet that was sent to you a summary on the school sites. You can see all the percentages. It's a little bit I apologize. It's a little bit difficult to get what an industry standard is on what we should be finding. Ideally 100%, ideally. But realistically, we know that things are in closets, they're in storage, people don't bring them in, they can be hard to find. So we want to know what would actually be a good audit. And over the years, what we have settled on is if we can get under 2% per site, that's pretty good. That's actually pretty good. And it's been a struggle for a lot of the sites, especially with large volumes of moving inventory. If we can get under 0.5%, it's miraculous. And I'm happy to say that district-wide, we are currently at 97.7%. So we're right there district-wide. And a lot of that is because of, again, us, I'm sorry. And at almost every school site, we've hit that 98% number. I've also included a complete document for you, which includes every item that we're unable to locate and we would like to remove from TipWeb. That document also includes items that we have been able to locate, but they are currently marked as surplus or stolen or disposed, or we use them for parts or some other category of removing them from inventory. And we are seeking your approval to do that. That I stand for any questions.
So we're missing 452, right?
Correct. No.
No.
We're missing 418 on the spreadsheet I have of today.
Oh, okay.
But on yours, yes. 418 current.
Move to accept the technology audit results for school year 24-25.
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes,
Mr. Orozco,
Yes,
Mr. Crowe, yes, and thank you so much, Ben.
thank you.
thank you. Appreciate it.
I'd like to add one more thing for your consideration, and that is that you have approved us to remove these from the inventory system, and we'll pursue that. However, there are items on this list that we believe we can still locate. So some of them may remain in this limbo purgatory where we won't remove them just yet. We will if we have to, but otherwise we're going to try to find them.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
With that, on to consideration of approval of academic calendars for SY 25-26 for early college, high school, and BK programs.
Commissioner Rochi, members of the board, we stand before you today for you to approve the academic calendars for early college, high school, and my little school. And Ms. Sweeney, Ms. Lozano, and Mr. Simpson are all here to answer any questions that you may have.
what's different between the calendar that for regular school versus what it is
So
for?
ours will start, staff start the same day and end the same day as the regular K-12 calendar. That's when I came on board. That was one of the things that people requested. One of the big difference you'll see at the beginning in gray, we have 4 days for home visits. Every pre-K teacher has to make a home visit to every student. Those can take up to 2 hours per family, just depending on travel time and how talkative they are. Every Friday, we do have a half a day because they do a very deep cleaning in each classroom, cleaning all the toys, and the staff do that. It's not done by janitors. They take care of that. And so you'll see those half days, we have those. And then we have 3 parent-teacher conferences that are required with our grants. So we try to mirror the conferences with the district, but there is the first one we had to do differently, just because we're not in school long enough to get the data. And so we did have to do our parent-teacher conference at a different time. Otherwise, we follow the same schedule.
Any questions?
And the early college, high school calendar is, we're allowed by PD to have an adjusted calendar. And it only applies to our juniors and seniors who are taking college classes. And it's aligned with the university calendar. And so it starts 2 weeks later and ends a week earlier in the fall semester. In the spring semester, it starts a week later and ends 2 weeks earlier, or 3 weeks earlier, really, than the school calendar. And that's because a student who's only taking college classes wouldn't have anything to do if he was at school before, the college classes start. And I think that's, other than that, our staff follow the same calendar. It's the same breaks, with the exception that during spring break, our college students only get 1 week of spring break. They have to meet the requirements of their college classes during that second spring break.
Questions, comments by the board?
You can definitely see the logic of why that has to be different, especially when it comes to home visits. It's not easy to do those, and sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times to go see them and they're not there or whatever happens. So yeah, you can definitely see why things have to be different in those 2 schools.
No other questions or comments? I'll entertain motion.
I would move that for acceptance of the 2025-2026 early college, high school, university aligned calendar, and another one, right?
Pre-K.
And pre-K program.
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe?
Let's go. Mrs. Cowan,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez.
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
With that, you have a calendar. Thank you. With that, on to item S, consideration of agreement with the Southwest Council of Governments and a resolution of the same for 2024-2025.
Mr. President, members of the board, this is another annual resolution and agreement. It's for the district to join the Southwest New Mexico Council of Governments. The district has benefited from this in the past. It's how legislators are able to give us their junior monies. It's how we're able to go after capital outlay. So it does benefit the district to be a part of the Southwest New Mexico Council of Governments, and I stand for any questions.
Questions, comments? No, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move for the agreement with the Southwest Council of Governments and a resolution of the same for 2024-2025.
Well, second,
I'll second.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes, sir. Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Paez,
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley,
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe,
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
All right, with that, on to action item number 9, announcements. Any requests for agenda items on the board?
No.
Okay. Next regular meeting will be held April 17th, 2025 at 5:30 PM. The meeting will be held at the Emmett Shockley Administration Building, 400 Cody Road, Deming, New Mexico. With that, on to action item 10, adjourn open session and enter into closed executive session. No action will occur as a result of the closed executive session. The board will enter into closed session pursuant to sections 10-15-1H2, the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, limited personnel matters specifically to discuss potential qualified individuals to serve as interim superintendent, conduct interviews of qualified individuals to serve as interim superintendent, conduct interviews, and engage in interim superintendent contract negotiations.
Mr. President, members of the board, I just want to make a quick correction. It says no action will occur as a result. It's supposed to say no action will occur in closed session.
Okay. Duly noted.
You guys can always make your own decisions when you come up.
I'll move that we adjourn open session and enter into closed executive session for the reasons described by President Orozco.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Grow?
Mrs. Cameron,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Cameron,
Yes.
Mr. Orozco,
Yes.
Mr. Columbus.
With that, we're in closed session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Mr. President, members of the board, I do apologize. The live stream wasn't turned on, but at 8:52, Mr. Kroll made the motion to enter back into open session. Mrs. Cameron seconded with a 5-0 vote to enter back into open session.
So as discussed, no action was taken within closed session. But we want to set another, meeting for Monday, which would be ours is the 21st, so Saturday's the 22nd, Sunday's the 23rd, the 24th at 5:30. There's a special meeting. Want to set that at 5:30 here at the Shockley Administration Building. And then entertain any other motions.
Well, I think we should discuss first before motions about next steps for filling the vacancy, including possibly soliciting proposals from search consultants and what the board thinks about that. I'm in favor of that. I think that it allows for a more transparent process within the community. I don't necessarily know anything about what consultants are available. But I think that's something that the board should consider.
I second that motion that we get a consultant.
Okay, is that sufficient?
Yeah, it's sufficient.
Okay, motion in a second. Mr. Cole, can you call roll, please?
Mrs. Cameron?
Yeah.
Mrs. Paez?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mrs. Plumley?
Yes.
Mr. Crowe, yes.
Okay, so that's to start the process for the search companies. Okay, any other business needs to be discussed? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Mr. Crowe?
Mrs. Cameron?
Yes.
Mrs. Paez?
Yes.
Mrs. Crumley?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.